Hi, I'm Gloria Donahue, and welcome back to Nana's Cookery, the whole program that's been set up by my grandchildren to keep me busy. We're actually doing a marathon. This is the 5th recipe I've done in 3 days. I don't know whether they want to make videos or whether they just want to eat. So far we've made Quakertown pie, a coffee cake, a chocolate banana cake, fried chicken, and this is our 5th, which they've never had. And when I first saw this in a cookbook and made it, I wrote down fabulous with a star because my husband and I love it. It's called Golden Baked Vidalias. And it's from this cookbook. It's a North Carolina fundraiser. And I'll tell you what it is and what the ingredients are, and then we'll put it together. You take Vidalia onions, and they're the sweet onions. Could be Maui, could be Walla Walla, any of the sweet onions. And you slice them. And you saute them in butter till they're nice and soft. You mix, I don't use many canned soups in my dishes, but this is one of them. A can of cream of chicken soup, a cup of milk you mix in with those onions. And then you put the mixture in a two quart buttered dish. And then you layer that with and there's a little pepper in with the soup too. And you sprinkle with 3/4 of a pound, which would be 12 ounces of Gruyere cheese, and which I have used. And if you don't have the Gruyere, you can substitute Swiss for it, but the Gruyere sort of has a nice nutty thing to it. And you sprinkle that over, and then you take a French baguette that you have cut into pieces. You've dipped one side in melted butter. And then you put the whole thing, you put the French bread over the top, and then you put it in the oven. And when it comes out, you have this really glorious creamy onion mixture with these crunchy French baguettes. My husband and I love it for dinner, just with a salad or soup or something. So I'm going to enjoy making it, and I hope you enjoy eating it. I chopped the original recipe called for 6 Vidalia onions. I don't. I use 4 only because they're so big. Most of the Vidalia onions are really, really large. And don't buy Vidalia onions like you buy regular onions. Don't buy a 3-pound bag of them. Because they're sweet, they do not last as long. I buy them for a recipe that I need, but I don't try to keep them for 3 or 4 weeks. They won't keep. So buy them. They're wonderful. I'm not a raw onion fan at all. I never eat raw onion except in salsa. But I love cooked onions. It just gives a wonderful feel. And these onions, I'm going to do the 4th one. I've done the other 3. They're going to really cook down because there's a tremendous amount of water in onions. And the way I'm going to cut them is, you can use a mandolin. I'm not going to use a mandolin. That's the, where you pull across and slice. I'm just going to use a regular, big old chef knife. And I cut off that end. And because they're so big, I'm going to slice it in half because it's going to be a lot easier to slice that way than try to do a whole big onion. And they're going to cook down anyway, so it doesn't matter. I want to make sure I don't get any of that skin on there. So this is all we do. You just go thinly across with a chef knife. If there's one tool you need in cooking, it's a chef knife. It's a big one like this. And what you're doing is basically going down, but there's a slight forward action, because that slight forward action is what separates what you just cut. If you just go boom, boom, boom without that, very often it didn't get that very last separation. Now I have already melted my stick of butter, and I'm going to use a big pot because I'm going to put so many onions in it. And then I'm going to cook it at a medium heat. I don't want to char these onions. I don't want brown onions, and I'm not going to cook them long enough that they're caramelized. When they're caramelized, they really cook down. I made a lasagna where it called for 5 pounds of onions, and when the caramelization was done, it was down to here. So there's a tremendous amount of water in them. But because it's such a bulky thing right now, I am using a big pot. Although the recipe originally called for a big skillet, I thought no, because I won't be able to turn them. You always have to allow, when you put things in a pan, if you're going to have to scoop it, you can't have things come right to the top because that gives you no leeway. You'll start to turn it and it'll come out over. So you have to think about things like that when you cook. I'm going to use, it says, a 2-quart dish. if you're uncertain, and you want it to be shallow because you want to be able to put lots of bread on it, if you're uncertain as to what a pan will hold, a cake pan, a pie plate, or whatever, just do it with water. Measure it with water and say, okay, well that will hold 4 cups. That will hold six cups. That's a good way to do it if you're uncertain, especially if you're doubling a recipe or halving it because you're just not sure what it's going to do. Okay, we're going to put these onions on the stove and cook them. As you can see, we're cooking our onions down. They're not ready yet. They're still too firm. We want them to be really limp. That's the sign of an onion that you're ready to move on with. And I just stir it every once in a while. And this is what I mean about having a pan large enough that you can reach and turn. If the pan were too shallow, I couldn't do that. We're ready. You can see our onions have really cooked down and they're really limp. And that's what you really want. That tells you that they're done. And we're going to put them in a 2-quart greased dish. And then over that, we're going to pour a mixture in here of the 1 can of cream of chicken soup, a cup of milk, some salt and pepper, and then I whisked it in this to get together. I used Campbell's cream of chicken soup, and if you're living somewhere else in the world, you don't have that. But I'm sure you have some sort of a condensed soup, and it would be the standard size, which would be about 10 3/4. So I'm sure you can get something very similar to it somewhere. We're going to pour this over the onions. Just going to mix that in. And there was a little salt and pepper added there, and not too much salt because you know there's always salt in these condensed soups. Now I've already cut the bread, so that's ready. We're going to dip that in butter, but first we're going to put the grated cheese on top. Again, 12 ounces of grated Gruyere. I did it in my processor. You know I use the processor a lot, but you can do it by a hand grater if you want. I doubt you can buy the grated Gruyere. But if you don't have really the means of grating and you're willing to use Swiss, I'm sure you can buy grated Swiss already. And so that would be 12 ounces, 3/4 of a pound of it. And we're just going to put that all over. And again, when you're starting to do this stuff, you want to make sure it covers. Don't put it all in one end and then find, oh, I've got nothing for the other end. So sort of feel your way along when you're doing toppings like that. You can see there's a lot of cheese here. Honestly, I haven't had it for a while. We only do it when Vidalias are in season, and they're not in season all year. But it's very cheesy, very oniony. So of course, there's no calories in this dish. Now, I cut quite a few of these baguette slices from French bread, and I don't know how many it's going to take. I want as many as possible because that's what you do. That's what you want to do. You want to get that bread with all the onion and cheese on it. So we're just going to put them. I'm not even going to worry about a certain design or anything. We're just going to fill in all the spaces. And this is a stick of butter. So I hope that's going to be enough for me to do that. That's what I did. I melted 1 stick of butter. And this is 1 big long loaf of French bread. And if you're uncertain if you're going to have enough for something, I think I'm going to be okay. Then maybe you shouldn't put them so close together, and you can go back and maybe put them a little closer together if you find, oh, okay, I have plenty, I'm okay. But I think we're going to do fine. It looks like 1 loaf is just about fine for this. I didn't even need a whole stick of butter, actually. So let's say you probably could have done maybe 2/3 of a stick would get it there. I can't believe this. I'm never this good. That this comes out exactly fine. Okay. Now they're all tucked in there, and we're going to put that in the oven at 350 for about 30 minutes. And what's going to happen is the cheese is going to melt, and of course that bread is going to toast on the top. And you could do it in smaller little plates for someone. If you wanted to do it in little bowls, you could do it individually. Because we're obviously going to all dig into this same casserole, but you could do it in separate little bowls. You do need something like a bowl though, because it's going to have a creamy bottom. You couldn't do it on a plate. Well, it's out of the oven, it's bubbly, and we're going to sit down and enjoy it. I enjoyed the last few days of filming because it was done by my grandchildren. My granddaughter's behind the camera right now. Craig is to my right, Thomas to my left. We thank you for visiting Nana's Cookery. And I'll try not to cry. Bye-bye.